Well, good morning, everyone. It is great to be back. And hey, look, it is week one is 7 days away. Jed, Jimmy, welcome to all of you guys. And today, Jed, and as some of you guys, some Jed knows that Jimmy and I are actually off on an international trip for work. And so we may not be around to record for week one. And so we're going to preview week one earlier. So unless, Jed, you want to sit there on next week and do two shows on
Yeah, we'll do the Jed's picks and Jed's locks. No, that's totally fine. Hope you guys have a great trip.
Well, I'm hoping that maybe you and your son could do a father-son podcast.
Oh, that would just be us arguing over.
Hey, Now before we start with news and notes, does your son really think differently than you in terms of evaluating players?
No, we're often very similar. I'm actually always impressed that he comes up with some strategy. Like I told you, this last one, he drafted Raheem Mostert and Trey Sermon, which I thought was really smart to cover the 49ers backfield. And so, yeah, he comes up with some picks, and he likes to say that he hit Derrick Henry before Derrick Henry became Derrick Henry. I don't know if that's true, but he likes to think that.
I'm always impressed when I'm on some of these leagues. And I don't think that some of these people would know who like Trey Sermon is or some of these other players that, are usually on the radar. But I'm impressed when they can figure it out, or at least they know how to bid on them.
Yeah, I'm in a work league that's drafting today, this afternoon. We actually get to draft during the workday, so I can technically say I'm being paid while I'm doing fantasy, which is cool. But yeah, I'm very curious because I work in research, and so I'm curious to see the level of skill and quality. Some of them have not played before, but others have. So it'll be interesting to see what they know and what they don't.
Except Jimmy and I were on a 12-team auction draft, and for some reason, one guy bidded $1 for J.K. Dobbins. Another person put another $1. I'm sitting there. Do you guys not know that J.K. Dobbins is out for the year?
Was it a keeper league? Maybe that's
No, it's not a keeper league.
Oh well, yeah. But remember, there was also who was the player last year that had the same name? It was like one player that had the exact same name as someone who was really good, and you could kind of trick people into getting that guy. Was it David Johnson?
I think I remember, but I don't remember the name of the person.
It might have been David Johnson. I don't know, but I remember that happened to one person in one league.
Yes, I do. Okay. Yeah. Hey, today we're going to talk about news and notes. Players, Jimmy wanted to talk about players you love to draft because with all three of us, there are certain players we just love all the time, and preview of week one. All right? So let's dive into news and notes. Brandon Ayuk remains sidelined at Thursday's practice with a hamstring injury. Jay, I know you like Brandon Ayuk. I mean, are you concerned? Are you picking up Deebo Samuel?
Yeah, I mean, this puts more weight on Deebo. So if you have Deebo Samuel, you definitely want to play him out there this week in week one. But, it's just same old story with both those guys. It's all about injuries. They're both great wide receivers. I wouldn't mind having either on my team. I just don't think you can count on them for the year. Probably injuries will linger throughout the whole season.
Yep. Jim, CeeDee Lamb is finally activated from the reserve COVID list. And look, he's probably going to be the star wide receiver over Amari Cooper. Revamped offensive line. It seems like Ezekiel Elliott is really shooting higher on the draft boards now. What thoughts on CeeDee Lamb?
I like CeeDee Lamb. I actually think a lot of people have been saying that he's going to be a surprise pick as a really, really good wide receiver this year. I've been surprised how low he's moved in the ADP, right? So there's certain receivers people are going after. I wonder if people were just scared off on the fact that he was on the COVID list for a little bit, and people are scared about Dak Prescott. But I actually think that CeeDee Lamb's going to have a great year this year. So for me, one of those people I've been targeting.
In week one, Cowboys are playing Tampa Bay in Tampa Bay. The Tampa Bay Bucks are 7.5-point favorites, so expect a shootout. Expect a lot of points. I expect the Cowboys to put up points, and CeeDee Lamb should be one of the recipients.
Yeah, but okay, going back, I'm not as high on Ezekiel Elliott as some other people are. I mean, if you watch the HBO series, the running joke I've been reading on Twitter is when your running backs' calves and legs are smaller than your quarterbacks. That's never a good thing, right? And so they were showing pictures of comparison between the two. And so I think here's my thing. I'm not high on Ezekiel Elliott, but I'll go for a Tony Pollard if he's around towards the end of the draft.
Yeah. Hey, Baltimore, Rashad Bateman, Miles Boykins are now on IR. Jed, I mean, you love Mark Andrews, all right? I mean, Mark Andrews is an extend the top. J.K. Dobbins is injured. Gus Edwards is there. Marquis Brown is always lurking there. What are your thoughts? Are you picking up Lamar Jackson just because he has so much more opportunities? What are your thoughts on the Baltimore Ravens?
Yeah, I mean, I like Lamar Jackson a lot because he's the focal point of the offense because of his legs. As far as the receiving core, I do think Mark Andrews is prime for a bounce back year. Everyone was kind of down on him last year. He didn't produce as well. I think he will produce better this year. I think he's a lock as his top 5, maybe even as a top 3. But other than Andrews, I'm suspect on the receiving core there because it's just so spread out. It's not consistent. So other than Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews, I think the running game is where you could potentially pick up some points. But again, there we know it's going to be a split committee for a while. So maybe want to see how that shakes out. The only other piece I'll mention is they are playing the Raiders this week. And so they are actually 4-point favorites, even though it's out in Las Vegas. And so I would expect them to win this weekend.
Hey, Jed, let me ask you a quick question. Marquis Brown, in the last 2 years, ever since he came from a rookie, has always been on everyone's team. I don't see him being drafted at all this year. Why do you think that's the case?
Yeah, the consistency is the biggest issue. I mean, he'll have probably, maybe 3-4 good games, but there's just not consistency. And I don't blame him. It kind of reminds me a little bit of, if you guys remember, Kansas City, until Tyreek Hill, really the last 2 years kind of solidified his consistency. There was a period where you couldn't tell which receiver was going to get all the yards in Kansas City, or like in Pittsburgh is another good example. And so I think Marquis Brown is suffering from that. It's just a lack of consistency. I would watch it though. I mean, he's in his 3rd year. Traditionally, wide receivers in their 3rd year is when they hit their peak. And so, this could be a year for him.
Yeah. Hey, Jim, I've noticed that Tyson Williams, who's replaced a rookie running back who was number 2 on the depth chart, you picked him up, but suddenly yesterday you start dropping him. Why is that?
Well, no, I like him. I had to drop him because I had to make room for CeeDee Lamb that was on IR for all my teams. And so there was one team, there was no one else I could drop. It was either dropping Tyson Williams or dropping someone like Javonte Williams from Denver. And so I had to drop him. I did not want to drop him because here's my thing. I actually think he's a good, big running back. A lot of people are going after Gus Edwards. I'm not high on Gus Edwards the last few years when Gus Edwards has actually had a chance to shine. I mean, he'll get you like 10, 12 points. He's nothing special. So for me, Tyson Williams is actually somebody I really like.
Yeah, Jed, a couple more news. I love your thoughts on a couple of news. Irv Smith, the sleeper tight end, is out for the year. The Vikings have traded for Chris Herndon from the Jets. Cam Newton will not be signing with the Washington football team. Ron Rivera says that Cam Newton's release did pop up on our radar, but Ryan Fitzpatrick is the starter. And also, give me 1 minute. Thoughts on any of those?
Well, the Cam Newton one, what a shocker. I mean, you expected, even if they picked Mac Jones to go be the starter, you thought they would keep Cam as a backup. So that was really interesting. But, I was just looking at his performance last year. It was pretty horrendous when you look at it. He had, I think, 10 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. So just really horrific numbers. That's interesting that people are mentioning. I assume he probably will get picked up somewhere. But personally, I would not be interested. I think Mac Jones is someone to take a look at. If you need a good backup or didn't get a good quarterback in the top 10 or 12, someone to look at.
Hey, Jed, if you had to make a guess, I thought it was going to be the Washington football team. Where do you think he's going to end up, Cam Newton?
That's good. Maybe Miami. Miami was linked with Deshaun Watson. We haven't seen that happen, so maybe Miami could be a spot for him. I don't know. We'll see. But Cam Newton really might be past his prime. I'm more interested in Deshaun Watson. Now, there's someone who, between those guys, Deshaun Watson, some people are saying he's not going to play this season. I just am not sure that's true. So, and he's such a talent. I mean, that is a guy who, if he was playing, could definitely turn the tide for your team and maybe even win you a championship.
Correct, because Tyrod Taylor, who is now the starter, has never done well. I could see Cam Newton go to Houston, but you're right. Deshaun Watson sitting there. I can even see Cam Newton going to Detroit over at the Lions in case Jared Goff fails.
Here's the problem, and they were talking about this yesterday on ESPN. The problem they said is Cam Newton is pretty arrogant, right? So he's not going to do what Jameis Winston does, which is go to the Saints, be a backup, and just kind of sit there. They said Cam Newton wants to be a starter. Unfortunately, I feel like he's also past his prime as well, too. The one good thing, and I benefited from this yesterday, is I think with Mac Jones now being quarterback, all of a sudden, the Jacoby Myers, the Jonnu Smiths of the world, I feel like they've gone up in terms of value and fantasy enough where Tommy was able to trade me a Jonnu Smith for I forgot who.
Marquis Galloway.
Marquis Galloway in return, right? And I love Marquis Galloway. But I also know that with Mac Jones coming in, Jonnu Smith actually might have a better year now than if Cam Newton was quarterback.
Yeah, and if you had Irv Smith, just to your point there earlier on him going out, Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, those are a couple guys I would look at maybe as potential replacements. Mm-hmm. I will say the Vikings are a little bit under the radar. I was just noticing. So their Vikings are playing Cincinnati this week, and they are 3-point favorites, which I think is low. I think the Vikings are going to beat the Bengals handily. I think the Vikings are going to be stronger. And if you have a Justin Jefferson, now, even though they traded for a new tight end, I think this ups the Justin Jefferson stock.
Yeah,
he should be in and maybe even Adam Thielen.
Yeah. Now, speaking of Jed, we were just talking about trades. I just traded Jimmy because he loves Callaway. I like this other one from Indianapolis, Michael Pittman. Oh, yeah. So I wanted Michael Pittman and Jonnu Smith for Marquez Galloway. And I think a lot of times with T.Y. Hilton now on IR, there's no clear one wide receiver, Michael Pittman Jr., sent up the draft board.
Oh, absolutely. Pittman's a stud. I mean, he is definitely capable of being a number one. That is a very good sleeper pick. Not sleeper pick, but just under the radar. A lot of people aren't really paying attention to a Pittman. But as long as Carson Wentz is healthy and is not on the COVID list, I think Pittman is a very solid pickup.
And my thing is with Marquis Galloway, right? You're going to have Jameis Winston as quarterback. He's going to be the number one receiver. They've already shown in preseason they have a good connection. I think purely from a ceiling perspective and Winston throwing, I actually think Callaway's going to have a really good year. I'm not the type of guy. I'm not the guy who's going after the Michael Thomas because I think even if he comes back, I think he's going to take a while to kind of get adjusted. I don't know if he'll really have that good of a productive year this year.
So I'm on the opposite on that. I've got my
you think
on at least one team, and we know now they put him on the PUP, so you know that he's going to miss at least 7 weeks. So you probably won't get him back until week 8. But to me, that's fine. That's basically the back half of the season. Your prime, let's say by then you're, let's say, in the top 4 somewhere in your league. You add a Michael Thomas to that mix, that's going to push you over into the playoffs and potentially into winning your league. I also disagree on the stat point because I think even with Callaway doing well, I think that actually opens it up for Michael Thomas. And we know Winston's going to be throwing the ball a lot.
Okay, Chad, now let me ask you, do you like Michael Thomas enough? Like, for instance, here's the dilemma I am, that if you're in a league with no IR spots, are you keeping Michael Thomas?
If I have, it depends on how heavy the bench is, like how deep the bench is. Like in our league, we only have 4 bench spots. I wouldn't hold one for Michael Thomas there. But if you've got a deeper bench spot, like I've seen some leagues with as much as 7 bench spots, then I think Thomas is worth it.
But okay, so here's the concern this year, right? Because most of these teams usually only have one IR spot. If you take a Michael Thomas or if you take a Deshaun Watson, you're sacrificing the IR spot for a player that you may put on them because of COVID. And with COVID breaking out in places like Florida or Texas, my guess is that IR spot's going to become very valuable as the season goes on.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you know what? The thing is you can always drop him. So you can always make the switch and then see if someone else does it. I mean, that's another strategy you could use with Thomas is if you feel like the rest of the league is not going to pick him up, you can leave him out there and then just try to wait until, week 5, week 6, and then pick him up a few weeks before. But again, I think he's going to be fantasy relevant.
Hey, one thing in terms of fantasy relevance, sleepers for the New England Patriots, watch Ramandre Stevenson rookie running back from the New England Patriots. I picked him up in a couple leagues, but watch him as a potential sleeper because there's a reason why they traded Sony Michel. Damian Harris is a stud. I think he's going to do really, really well. But at the same time, Ramandre Stevenson is coming up and has excelled over at training camp.
My oldest son, Jeremiah, is high on him because he's an Oklahoma Sooner. And so, I totally hear you. And I think that's actually, you're absolutely right, is when you see a drop like a Sony Michel or a trade like Sony Michel, especially with New England, you always have to look who's behind because they don't make the same thing with Cam Newton. They don't make those moves that tells you something about what they think of everyone else. So I totally agree with you.
I mean, Belichick, think about it, right? Like all the years he's dropped Chandler Jones, he's dropped Seymour, and we've always wondered why is he dropping them? But the year after, they're not as good. And so he knows that there's something there. I'm surprised, quite honestly, the Rams gave him a 4th-round pick for Sony Michel. I think that's going to be a deal for the Rams.
Yeah, I think the Patriots have really learned about, or they really lead the league as far as trade. It's better to trade someone too early than too late. Like they're willing to sacrifice one good year and then the guy drops off, but sometimes that doesn't happen. But I think more teams should be doing that, but the Patriots are the only ones with the guts to do it.
Jim, last thing before we move on, Tony Romo believes that Zach Wilson will be one of the top 3 to 5 quarterbacks very quickly at the Patrick Mahomes level. What do you think?
You know, I don't know about that. I mean, but it's made me go back and look at the stats for Zach Wilson, and I would at least put him as somebody to look after. But Romo did say he's got the skills to be almost like an Aaron Rodgers type of player. And he's had a decent preseason, right? And so in the past, I was looking at a Justin Fields. I was looking at a Trey Lance, somebody to kind of take in a dynasty league and stash. I will at least be paying attention to Zach Wilson.
Yeah, and for me, that's why I picked up Corey Davis. Is like on the off chance that Wilson is decent, Corey Davis could be the recipient. And you guys remember his time with the Titans. The guy is a player, so we can see what happens.
Well, Jed, because you were saying it, I've been keeping an eye out on Corey Davis as well too.
Well, hey, look, speaking of that, there are players every single year there are certain players that we love. And I'm in about 5 drafts, and you find yourself picking the same players over and over and over again. Jim, since you came up with this idea, who are the players that you've been loving in this year's draft that you find yourself drafting all the time?
Well, at the very top of the list, right, I really like Calvin Ridley. And so in all the draft boards and on the auction boards, I'm more than willing to pay a little bit more for Calvin Ridley just because I think he's going to be the clear number 1 option. They're going to be throwing the ball, and he's going to take over all the touchdowns that Julio Jones is not going to be going after this year. So he's the person that I've been really liking. Now, I will say on the back end, the targets that I've been going after, I've been going after Michael Pittman from the Colts. Callaway from the Saints, I've been really going after. Williams, the backup running back for Baltimore. Those are the ones that I've been really going after.
And the rookie running back from Denver, you seem to like.
Michael Carter and then Davis. Like those are the guys that I feel like I can get cheaply that's going to give me some potential good production. I'm taking a chance on Michael Carter because I know he's still sharing that backload. But I actually think that long term, he actually might be a decent player from a dynasty perspective.
Jed, what about yourself? Which players are you seeming loving this year? Well, I could kind of guess. Kyle Pitts is probably one of them. You seem to love Kyle Pitts. Logan Thomas is another one. You love your tight ends.
Yeah, so I was gonna say Logan Thomas. Kyle Pitts, that was, that's for our keeper league, so I think a little bit different situation where you really need to pay attention to your rookies. But as far as tight ends, Logan Thomas I think is huge value. Even picking him up as a second tight end, I had George Kittle's in one league, and I picked up Logan Thomas. In another league, I picked up Logan Thomas as my second tight end. I think he's going to have great production. Actually, all of the Washington team players, Antonio Gibson, I think still is undervalued. If you can get him in the second round, I think that's a great pick. The other guy I will mention just for the first round, I got Aaron Jones at the 10th spot in the league that we drafted in recently. And the more I thought about that, I was like, that is just insane that I got Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is a potential top 5 back. And so if you see him sitting out there at the end of round 1, you should jump on that because people are forgetting. I think it's because he was the whole, Aaron Rodgers thing, and it put people off on him, and then it didn't catch back up to where he was from last year. This guy is a top 5 running back.
And plus, A.J. Dillon's sitting there too, and so people are concerned about A.J. Dillon.
Yeah, but to me, I'm not as worried actually. The fact that they got rid of what was it? Was it Williams, the former backup last year? Yeah, so I actually think that plays better into Aaron Jones's stock than anything else.
Yeah, Jed, I totally agree with you. I love the Washington football team. I love it to the point where Terry McLaurin, as well as Antonio Gibson, I have been very highlighted, and also the San Diego team, Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen. I love those guys as well, too. I've been waiting for the tight ends to kind of draft, unless for some reason Logan Thomas drops in my lap, or I've been going with Jonnu Smith. And so as my tight end as well, too. Hey, look, people can have Kelsey, people can have Kittles, people can have Waller. Give me some Jonnu Smith. Give me some Logan Thomas, and I'm very, very happy by that.
There's a couple players I've been paying attention to, and I want to see what you guys think. So Jacoby Myers from New England, Tyrell Williams from Detroit, Jamal Williams from Detroit, and Gerald Everett, the tight end from Seattle. I've been surprised the potential of especially the Tyrell Williams and the Jamal Williams in Detroit. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I'm personally worried about Detroit. I mean, I just have never been a Jared Goff fan. So we'll just have to see. I think, DeAndre Swift, that's someone who I feel like they're going to have to lean on the running game a little bit more. But I'm worried about Jared Goff. Even when he was with the Rams, I was never a fan of the receiving game there with him at quarterback. So I think we'll have to wait and see.
Yep. Hawkinson definitely is the one to target as well, too. Gerald Everett over Seattle is pretty good because his new offensive person over in Seattle and play caller was from the Rams. Brought him on as a free agent, so I like a Gerald Everett. I think the Seattle offense will be very good this year with Chris Carson and TJ Lockett and all those guys like that, and DK Metcalf, and Russell Wilson's going to have a great year. I am concerned about Detroit as well, too. Jamal Williams, I think a lot of times if DeAndre Swift continues to struggle, Jamal Williams will take some carries. Terrell Williams, hey, he was decent with the Las Vegas Raiders. So we'll see what happens with that. But Jared Goff, definitely if for some reason they do sign Cam Newton, hey, things might change over there.
Oh, that would be crazy if he signed there. A couple running backs I want to mention too. Myles Gaskin in Miami. I know I feel like people are forgetting about this guy, and I think he could, he's been average draft position has been at like 25th running back. I think he's easily top 20, could be an RB2, solid RB2 for you. So that's one guy I'll mention. And then another one is Nyheim Hines out in Indianapolis behind Jonathan Taylor. Again, these are guys you can get really late, but Hines had a couple games last year where he really popped off. And so I would just watch that one.
You know what? Go ahead.
No, actually, Jim, I was going to ask you, is Jed and Jimmy, I'd love to get your thoughts on it. Here's a trade scenario that I'm actually looking through. On my team, I would trade Odell Beckham, Dalvin Cook, which I know Jed loves, and Kyle Pitts, and this is not a Dynasty League, for Adam Thielen, Najee Harris, and Austin Eckler. Would you make that trade?
Who was the first three again? Dalvin Cook?
Dalvin Cook, Odell Beckham, and Kyle Pitts. For Adam Thielen, Austin Eckler, Najee Harris.
I think Dalvin Cook is the –
Yep.
You're losing a lot.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But then you only have Austin Eckler and Najee Harris.
I mean, but to me, the kicker there is Adam Thielen. I think that's actually what makes it worse because Thielen is on the downswing. Like, I don't feel like if you're equating him to a Kyle Pitts, no way, right? Like, Pitts is definitely better than him. So I feel like that's, I don't know. I wouldn't make that trade.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing too is Odell Beckham, right? He could have a really, really bad year, or he could be the number one receiver in Cleveland. And do really well. And so I feel like taking a chance on him, having somebody consistent with Dalvin Cook and a potential like Kyle Pitts is better than the other option that you're looking at. The
one thing I'll say is if your strategy is that you need to beef up your running back game, that's the reason to make that trade, right? Because you've got two solid running backs coming back in Eckler and Najee Harris. So if the running back position is really weak and this helps you then fill that, I think that's potentially worth it. But you're giving up a lot, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Got it. Jim, anything else before we move to previewing week 1?
No, I'm good.
All right. Hey, week 1, Jed, I'm going to start with you. Hey, look, we are not ready for this, but going forward, beginning week 2, Jed, we'll do a weekly segment. We haven't figured out what we're going to call it yet. Is it Jed's numbers? Is it Jed's matchups? Because I know you love the betting line and you love talking about the teams. So figure out a name and we'll figure out a segment. Jimmy's segment will be on Tuesdays. Your segment will be on Fridays when we record, all right?
Sounds great. I always love looking at the lines. I feel like you can learn something, not just because I like to gamble, I do like that, but just to look at the lines, I feel like it tells you something about the teams that you can then use for fantasy. For example, in the Las Vegas always puts what they think the total points will be. That tells you the games that are going to be the highest scoring, which is where, again, you may want, if you're trying to decide between two players, you may want to go for those matchups that are higher scoring so you can get those points.
Interesting. Very good nugget. Hey,
Thursday. Did you guys know this? There's only one Monday Night Football game this year. There's usually 2 Monday Night Football games. I'm surprised.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, it's the Ravens Raiders is the Monday night game.
I always look forward to 2 Monday Night Football games on the first week.
Yeah.
Now, with that said, are you guys going to watch the regular Monday Night Football cast, or are you going to go look for the Manning simulcast?
I'll look for the Mannings. The Mannings will be so much more interesting to watch.
Oh, I was never a fan of Peyton Manning as a player. I thought he was just like so arrogant and like didn't like wasn't always a great team guy. But now that he's retired, I love Manning. Anytime he is doing commentary, other than maybe I love Tony Romo as well as a commentator, but Manning is hilarious. Have you ever watched Manning on Saturday Night Live? The guy is so funny.
Yeah. Hey, Jed, on the opposite end, I love Manning as a quarterback. I thought he was the best quarterback and made everyone succeed around him.
Well, he was a fantasy number 1 for sure, but I don't know. I don't you guys remember? Like he used to throw his line under the bus. He would if they lost, he'd say, "Oh, the line did this and this." And I was like, man, if you're a leader, if you're a quarterback, you don't say that. You just take the heat and say it's all on you, and then keep going. So that always rubbed me wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, Tom. So I'm looking at this right now. So they will not have a permanent third host for Monday Night Football. It's going to be a rotating group of people. And the first one that they're going to be doing is the Ravens versus Raiders on September 13th.
Yep. Now, you know who the third person who really wanted that full-time job was, but they decided not to go with him? Adam Schefter really wanted to be that third person.
Oh, really? Yeah.
That would be fun.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Anyways, I'll walk to Mannings. I actually think it'll be a lot more interesting to watch them.
Jed, let's go with the first game, the Thursday, September 9th game, Cowboys versus Buccaneers. Who's on your radar as you're looking at this particular game?
So to me, this is all the offensive players you want to put them in. This is going to be, a lot of fireworks. I feel like it's not going to be a defensive game. I do expect, so the Bucs are 7.5 point favorites. I expect the Bucs to win. That is a pretty big spread though. I think the Cowboys are going to be better than people think. Again, I think people are down on Dak and wondering what he's going to be like. I think they're going to be fine there and score some points. So I actually might take the Cowboys in this one.
Yeah. Jim, which players are you looking at for this game?
CeeDee Lamb is going to be somebody I'm really going to pay attention to. Here's the thing that I'm really going to be paying attention to. I think Tampa Bay is great, but Dallas, I want to see how Dak Prescott is doing, right? Because Prescott, if he does well and CeeDee Lamb does really well, I think that will be indicative of what's to come. If Dak Prescott is struggling, for me, what it might potentially tell me is there's more seriousness to his shoulder than they're letting on, right? So that there will be things that we're watching as well too. With Tampa Bay, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
With Tampa Bay, the question I would want to see is, I know what Chris Godwin's doing. I know what Mike Evans is doing, right? I want to see how good Antonio Brown is doing, because all reports out of training camp is he's faster. He's more in sync with the offense. And so I want to be able to see out of those three receivers, can Antonio Brown emerge? And who is going to be the number one? Is it Godwin or is it Evans?
That's a great call on Brown. And just so you know, you can get him really, really cheap and really, really late. A lot of people are not paying attention to him, but I agree with you. He could be a great sleeper that could really pop there. The only other thing I was going to mention, though, is I would just be a little cautious. Every year, I feel like in the first 2 weeks, there's a little bit of a mirage. Like if you look at the teams that come out of the first 2 weeks that are 2-0 versus those that are 0-2, it's a little bit of a mirage because the teams, especially now with COVID, with the lack of practice time, the shorter preseason, they really aren't who they're going to eventually be. So just be a little bit cautious. I see a lot of people get too excited after the first 2 weeks and maybe put too much emphasis on certain players and teams, and then it completely flips on them.
Yeah. One thing also to notice that both of you guys did mention, watch the division between Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones. Ronald Jones is something I've been targeting as well, too. Is Leonard Fournette going to get the touchdown carries? And so at the same time, how much of the carry and load will Ronald Jones do after a wonderful late season playoff run? Will they make that transition to him as well, too?
And remember, they also have Giovanni Bernard, right? And he's always been the goal line running back for Cincinnati. So I actually can see Giovanni Bernard taking some of those goal line touchdowns from both players.
All right, next game, Jaguars and Texans. Look, nobody is targeting the Texans as well, too. But, Jim, where are you looking at? I know you want to see what James Robinson does. Everyone wants to see Trevor Lawrence. Where are you looking in that game?
Yeah, okay, so this is something to watch for, right? Like, Jed, I know that you did say we need to be cautious about players and the production in the first couple of weeks. But remember, this time last year when we were watching the first game of Jacksonville, James Robinson came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden he became the sixth highest point scoring fantasy running back in 2020. So that's the other thing that I'm also watching in each of these games. Is there that one player that's going to come out of nowhere, right? For me, I think it might be a Tyson Williams from Baltimore. But is there a player similar to James Robinson that's going to come out of nowhere that's going to potentially help you and win your league? And it's not someone you drafted early, but someone you picked up from the waiver wire. So from this particular game, yes, I want to watch. I want to watch James Robinson. What I'm also paying attention to is how well is Trevor Lawrence going to do, and who is the number one receiver long-term for this year for Jacksonville. Because a lot of people still think it's Chark. I actually might think that Shenault might vault up to the top and could be that receiver that Trevor Lawrence is going to target. That's what I'm paying attention for.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Jimmy. It's the first 2 weeks of the waiver wire are probably the most important. I mean, that's really where you can get some players that are still under the radar. And as you said, a lot of teams, they know they've got an offensive skill player who's going to be great, but they purposely don't play them the whole preseason because they want to hide them. And then you'll see them pop in week one. And especially for the James Robinson example you gave last year, the key there is that he was a rookie. We hadn't seen anything from him. So I think any of the rookies, what I said about the first 2 weeks goes out the window, because if you see production from a rookie right away at that level, it usually means that's something they can sustain.
Yeah.
Got it. Hey, Jed, let me get your thoughts. Next one is my favorite matchup of this particular week one. Chargers against Washington. What are you watching on that game?
Chargers against Washington. That's the one you were going to pick. I thought you were going to say the Browns and the Chiefs, or the Titans and Cardinals, or Green Bay and the Saints.
Chargers and Washington.
Yeah. I like that game a lot. I mean, obviously Washington, I think Logan Thomas is a big one. We want to see, is it really going to pan out, everything? I think the main thing here is Fitzgerald, right? Everyone's expecting Fitzgerald to elevate the receiving game in Washington. We need to see that come true. I think Antonio Gibson, we can count on. He's going to have the production that he had last year. He's going to continue that growth. We're also expecting the Washington defense to be awesome and to really keep this game close. So the key is going to be, does Fitzpatrick still have Fitz magic? And does he have that connection with Logan Thomas and with Terry McLaurin? I think he will, but that's something I'll be watching.
Yeah.
Got it. Jim, next one, Seahawks, Colts.
Russell Wilson. I think we said this earlier. Russell Wilson's going to have a good year. I think all the experts are picking him to have a good year. I actually think that he will have a good year, especially the first 6 games. Russell Wilson's MO was usually for the first 6 games. I mean, you think about it last year. He was scoring. He scored what, 5 touchdowns? Yeah, he went off, right? And so I actually think that he'll do really good this year. DK Metcalf is going to do well. I think Chris Carson is going to do well. I'm also paying attention to Indianapolis because I want to see how is Michael Pittman going to do. Right? Is he legitimately a top 15 wide receiver in fantasy this year? And what's going to happen to Jonathan Taylor? Because I think early last year they had him share carries with Hines and Marlon Mack, and then Marlon Mack went down. Towards the end, Jonathan Taylor was the primary running back. So that's really what I want to see as well, too. Is he going to continue to be that primary running back in fantasy?
And Carson Wentz as well. We need to see, is the Carson Wentz from last year an aberration, or was that the downfall of Carson Wentz and now he's just an average quarterback? So if he starts to play the way he was in the Super Bowl year, then this could be a steal in Indianapolis. Remember, Indianapolis has a good defense as well. If Carson Wentz is good, Indianapolis is a strong contender.
Well, and he's reunited with Frank Wright, his old coach from Buffalo, right?
Exactly.
Or from the Eagles. And so I think that's one of the things that everyone's thinking is he will go back to form. And as a result, they're going to play better. But you're right. Let's pay attention to that.
And for those who have players, look, if you have Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, all the stud quarterbacks, you're not paying attention, Aaron Rodgers. But if you're like me and won the leagues and your starting quarterback is Ryan Tannehill, you're paying attention to Zach Wilson. You're paying attention to Sam Darnold. You're paying attention to Carson Wentz to see how well they do, because there might be somebody you might pick up as a second quarterback. You also want to see how Mac Jones does as well, too. Hey, speaking of Zach Wilson, Jed, let's go to the next one. Panthers and Jets. Who are you paying attention to?
Panthers and Jets. I think the whole Christian McCaffrey, obviously, when you think of the Panthers, but I think you just want to see like what's the offense going to look like, and McCaffrey is going to be back to his old style. I don't know. We have to see. I think the Jets too. As I said, Wilson is someone I'm paying attention. Corey Davis, but also I think the running game in New York. Because if Wilson, there's so much that hangs on Wilson with the Jets. If he is better than advertised, or if he is as good as potentially advertised, that opens up the running game. And there's going to be, essentially, like, who's the starting running back for the Jets right now?
Oh, it's a shared. It's Michael Carter and also Tevin Coleman.
Yeah, Tevin Coleman.
Don't ignore Panay.
Yeah, I was gonna say that Coleman is the one that of the two that I would pick. But if Wilson pans out, that running game, there could be some points there. And again, both those running backs may even be sitting on your waiver wire right now.
Yeah. And for Carolina, what I'm also paying attention to is how well is Sam Darnold going to do with his transition from the Jets to Carolina. I actually think because this is a revenge game, he will do well, right? So it'll take me a couple of weeks to really figure out, okay, like who is a real Sam Darnold? Because I think he's going to want to prove to the Jets, you let me go too early. The other thing I'm also paying attention to, I think Robbie Anderson is going to be consistent. I think Christian McCaffrey is going to be consistent. One player I'm looking for on my waiver wire, Chuba Hubbard. He seems to be somebody that people are targeting towards the late rounds. I haven't drafted him, but he might be on your waiver wire. He might be somebody to take at least pay attention to.
You gotta love the name Chuba.
Chuba Hubbard.
Jim, Vikings, Bengals, who are you looking at?
Jamar Chase, Cincinnati, right? I think T. Higgins is going to be the number one receiver. I think Tyler Boyd is going to have a pretty good year. I want to see how well is Jamar Chase going to be. When he first started preseason, there were bad reports coming out that he kept dropping balls. Towards the end, he's actually gotten better, and he has been off for an entire year. And so I wonder if it's just a matter of time before he gets back into that groove again. But I do expect a good game from T. Higgins. I expect a good game from Tyler Boyd as well, too. In Minnesota, you're right. I think Justin Jefferson is actually going to be better than most people realize he will be.
Top five wide receiver.
And Jim, wouldn't you say a lot of times you want to pay attention to Joe Mixon? Are we going to see the Joe Mixon of last year or 2 years ago when he was an all-pro? But last year he was terrible, and so some people are avoiding Joe. Like I've avoided Joe Mixon.
I always avoid Joe Mixon. I mean, Joe Mixon is not gonna. I mean, he'll get you some points, but I'm not a big fan of Joe Mixon. You know,
I think that's more offensive scheme than anything else. Joe Mixon, as a player, I think has the skill set, but this is a team that is built for throwing the ball. Cincinnati is going to go out and air it out. They're going to be behind a lot. The defense isn't going to keep things close. They're like the Detroit, of this this division, and so that's the problem with Joe Mixon. It's not an issue of scheme.
I mean, remember last year, Joe Burrow's ended up throwing the ball like 40 or 50 times in a number of those games. I think that's what they're going to keep doing. They're just going to keep airing that ball out.
Yeah, Jed, Cardinals, Titans. I know how much you love Derrick Henry.
Yeah. Oh, this is a great game to me. And I'm surprised that this is a fascinating game. I do love.
Oh, wow. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm surprised it's early.
Yeah, it's an interesting game. But remember, with the Titans, what they like to do is kind of save Henry until towards the second half. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the first few games, Ryan Tannehill throws the ball a lot. They want to get that connection with Julio, with A.J. Brown, kind of the new receiving core. They want to see what they have. So I would expect the Titans to air it out. The Cardinals, I am a big fan of Kyler Murray. You guys all know. I want to see his continued protection. I want to see his continued progression, and I want to see his continued improvement. And now they don't have Fitzgerald there, so we'll have to see, but I expect him and Hopkins to continue. Remember, they had this crazy connection last year where Hopkins had over 10 receptions in how many games? I forgot. But I want to make sure to see that he continues to ascend.
Some people think that Kyler Murray can potentially challenge Patrick Mahomes for number one status.
Yeah, the other one is the running back there too, right? Chase Edmonds, and we'll have to see, is he going to really take over as that number one and really fulfill everyone's hopes there? We all got bit last year, so I had to see with the Cardinals backs.
Jim, do me a favor. We hear your phone dinging a lot. Put it on vibrate as well, too, because it's dinging quite a lot. While you do that, let me actually ask Jimmy. Before you do, let me ask Jed. 49ers and Lions. Give me your thoughts on the 49ers and Lions.
Oh, another interesting one, at least from the 49ers perspective. Remember, all the injuries the 49ers had last year. It's what dampened all their hopes. They're getting a lot of these players back. I want to see the running game. I want to see Raheem Mostert back to form. I want to see a little bit of Trey Sermon in there. But also, Jimmy G. Let's see if Jimmy G can hold off all the, Trey Lance talk and play well. I'd like to see, we already know about the injuries to Brandon Ayuk, so I have to see with Deebo Samuels, but I would expect Jimmy G and George Kittle to continue that connection. So to me, this is all about the 49ers. On the Detroit side, we've already talked a little bit about, Jared Goff. Can he really get back to form? What's that receiving core going to look like? But also DeAndre Swift. I've been a DeAndre Swift fan for a while now. Hopefully this is the year he really puts it all together.
Jim, Steelers, Bills.
I actually think Roethlisberger is going to have a good year this year. I think the three receivers are going to be decent. I'm not as high on Juju Smith. I think Deontay Johnson is going to end up emerging as the number one receiver for them. I am intrigued to just see, how well is Najee Harris going to do? Everybody thinks he's going to be a top running back, even better than Hilaire did last year. And so really, I want to see, are they going to feed the ball to him, and how much of the offense is going to revolve around Najee Harris? And so for Buffalo, I think Diggs is going to be fine. I think Allen's going to be fine. The question then will be, who's the running back? Who's the primary running back? Is it going to be Zach Moss, or is it going to be Singletary? My suspicion, and this is just purely my suspicion, is I think it's going to be Zach Moss. I think they purposely did not play him lead running back. I think they just shared running back system during the preseason. I do think they're going to feed Zach Moss, and he's going to be the primary running back. But that's just my speculation.
Yeah. Eagles, Falcons, Jed?
Oh, interesting. Eagles. Jalen Hurts, obviously, we want to see if he can pick up and continue his progression. The thing with Jalen Hurts, I like Hurts. It's just his accuracy is what I'm always worried about. I think the other thing I'll say is Miles Sanders. I am a huge fan of Miles Sanders this year because he's playing with Hurts. If you look at the games that Miles Sanders got in with Hurts, his production was through the roof, because I think the defense had to respect both as runners. And so that really opened the lanes for Miles Sanders. So Miles Sanders for me is a little bit of a sleeper pick. On the Falcons side, obviously Kyle Pitts. I want to see Kyle Pitts. They really kept him under wraps in the preseason. He didn't play. And so I want to see that this guy is legit. And to me, if he doesn't have at least, 60, 70 yards, I'm going to be worried about all the teams that I picked him on.
And Jim, now we head to the 3:00 games, the Browns versus the Chiefs.
Okay, before I go into the Browns and Chiefs, let me just say the other thing I'm looking at for Philadelphia, Jed, I kind of want to see who's going to emerge from the receiving corps, right? Is Devontae Smith somebody that we're even taking a look at as well too? So
yeah, Devontae Smith is a huge one. Again, the size issue. Just wondering if he's really going to be able to perform. But I'm a fan, until proven otherwise. I'm a fan of his story, so I'm hoping that works out.
Yeah.
So I actually so for Cleveland and Kansas City, we know what to expect from Kansas City. The question from Cleveland will be Odell Beckham Jr. Is Odell going to be able to be the number one receiver, and what type of player is he going to be? I think out of that game, that's really the biggest question that we're going to see from those two teams.
Well, and Baker Mayfield, I'll say too, again, just if you're in a situation like Tommy, you've got Ryan Tannehill, Baker Mayfield is someone to pay attention to. If he performs at the level he was at last year and continues with that consistency with Stefanski and the offensive scheme there, Baker Mayfield could easily be top 10. He could sneak into the top 10 in quarterback play. So I agree with you. If OBJ is back up to what we would expect from him and Baker Mayfield is there, that could be a steal.
Yeah. Jed, Packers versus Saints. They're playing in Florida because of the hurricane. What do you think of Packers versus Saints?
Yeah, so this one, I think the interesting piece is all on the Saints side. We want to see Winston. We know Jameis Winston, what he was like back in the Tampa days. We want to see is he able to corral his interception rates? Is he still chucking the ball as much as he has before? Alvin Kamara, we want to see that he still has that connection with Alvin Kamara, and of course Jimmy's favorite with Galladay. We want to see if he's really a true number one. So I think a lot of the eyes are going to be on the Saints side. With the Packers side, I think we're just expecting that Aaron Jones and Aaron Rodgers, and of course Adams, the wide receiver, that they're going to be, what they've always been, which is number one at their position, and solid picks for those teams.
Jim, Broncos and Giants.
Broncos and Giants. So for me, Saquon Barkley. Is Saquon Barkley going to be healthy this year, and is he going to do well? I actually do think he's going to do well in this first game, but I'm not sure what he's going to be like for the rest of the year, right? The other thing is for Denver, I'm also trying to figure out who's going to be how well is Teddy Bridgewater going to be doing, and then also how are the running backs going to do it? By the way, I'm trying to turn off my phone. I can't figure out how to turn it off my computer.
That's all the money that Jimmy's making. Every time it dings, that's like his portfolio going up.
No, it's because I have all these people sitting here writing about how there's an increase in fraudulent COVID vaccine cards, and I'm trying to turn off my computer so they can stop writing to each other, but I can't turn it off. So bear with me as I'm trying to figure it out.
The other thing I'll mention with Denver is the wide receivers. I'm really interested in, I think, remember, Cortland Sutton is coming back from injury, but he has not looked good in the preseason. I like Jerry Jeudy in Denver as the number one wide receiver. I've got him on a couple teams. Remember, Jerry Jeudy's in his second year. He was basically neck and neck with CeeDee Lamb as who's going to be the best rookie wide receiver last year. This is their second year, so you should see a little ascension. So I really like Jerry Jeudy, maybe sitting out there on your waiver wire if you need a pickup for the weekend. Jerry Jeudy is the guy I target.
Hey, the one thing is Kenny Galladay completely has fallen off the cliff. What happened?
Yeah, everybody's worried about Daniel Jones. No one thinks he can get the ball out. I actually disagree about Saquon Barkley. I think the Giants are going to be terrible this year. So I'm staying away from all the Giants players.
Well, and plus, a lot of times Kenny Galladay is yet again dealing with another hamstring injury. And so he says it's just not healing. It's going slowly. Man, this guy is always injured.
Yeah, I think New York, of the two teams in New York, I've always said to avoid the New York teams, but of the two teams, the Jets now are the team that there is some hope there, and maybe you want to pay attention.
I mean, they're going to realize Daniel Jones is not the quarterback they thought he was, right? And so the year they drafted Saquon Barkley, they should have gone for a quarterback. Like, I think they should have gone for a quarterback instead of Barkley.
Who were the quarterbacks that came out that year? We should look at that.
You know what? Let me look at it. Yeah, go ahead.
But before you do, actually, Jim, we have 3 more games. I need you to comment on Dolphins versus Patriots.
Dolphins versus Patriots. I actually think this is going to be a pretty interesting game, right? For the Patriots side, I expect Mac Jones to do well. So for me, I'm looking at Mac Jones. I'm looking at Damian Harris. I'm looking at Jonnu Smith. I'm looking at Jacoby Myers. I want to see, are they going to be worth it for me to play on a weekly, consistent basis? On the Miami side, Jalen Waddle, somebody that's intriguing for me. I want to see how Tua's going to do this year as a quarterback. I actually think that he's actually going to do better. Now, the question that I'm also looking at is Devontae Parker going to be his number 1? Or is a Jalen Waddle going to vault up to the to the top spot in the wide receiver? And also we're looking at Gaskin and Gesicki. So I think there's a lot of questions from a fantasy perspective to be answered from this particular game.
And Jed, for the Sunday evening game, before you say anything, preview the Bears and the Rams. Will Justin Fields make an appearance at this game?
No, I don't expect to, barring injury. Other than injury, I think that's the only reason that we would see Fields. And let's just see. I mean, I think Andy Dalton. Let's give him a chance. I personally, as a Bears fan, I hope that Dalton can actually play well. I don't want it to be a situation where Pace is forced to play Fields. So I would really like to see. Not Pace. I'm forgetting the coach's name.
Nagy.
Yeah, that Nagy is forced to play him. So I would like to see Dalton do well, and the Bears can get maybe 4 or 5 games into the season and maybe be, let's say, 3-2. And then at that point, put in a Fields and let him take over for the rest of the season. That's what I'm
If you look at Yahoo and ESPN, they don't start projecting points for Justin Fields until game 5.
Yeah, that to me makes sense. A lot of times it's about 4 or 5 games where a coach will make a switch for the quarterback position. I mean, it's just a big deal to switch. And so the thing is once they make the switch, they can't go back. And so you don't want to make that decision until you absolutely have to.
Well, okay, let's be realistic. And I know we're all Bears fans. They're not going to beat the Rams. I don't think knowing them, they're not going to score anything. And they're going to be a lot of pressure to play Fields, but they're going to try to keep Fields off the field. But they are not going to do anything offensively in this game for the Bears.
Yeah, this is one of the biggest spreads, actually. They're 7-point underdogs, and so essentially Vegas is saying no one's expecting the Bears to win. I will say, though, the Bears know Matt Stafford, and so don't forget, they know his strengths and weaknesses, and that could come into play.
Yeah, the only concern is the offensive line. That front 7 of the LA Rams are very dominant, and they're going to push through the offensive line. 2 people that I would love to see, Damian Williams. I want to see how many carries that he gets, and Darnell Mooney. Damian Williams was very good with Kansas City, and also Darnell Mooney is now your second wide receiver with Anthony Miller gone. So let's see how well those do. Go ahead.
And on the Rams side, I know Tommy doesn't like him. I actually really like Cooper Kupp. I think Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods is going to have a good year. And I actually think this is my suspicion. I think Cooper Kupp's going to emerge as your number 1 receiver.
Wow, that's a big pick, man.
I think Cooper Kupp's going to have a great year.
That's actually, the argument for that is that Cooper Kupp is great across the middle and those short passes, and Stafford might be.
He loves those. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hey, last one, Jim, as we wrap up. Monday night game, Ravens versus Raiders.
I think my guess is Andrews is going to have 2 receptions for a touchdown. I actually think they're going to target him on the red zone. I am going to be watching out for the Gus Edwards versus Tyson Williams. I do think eventually Tyson Williams is going to be the number 1 running back in Baltimore. And then the other thing I'm also looking at from Las Vegas, I don't really care about the receivers because I think Darren Waller is their number 1 receiver. I think eventually Kenyon Drake is going to supplant Josh Jacobs as the number 1 running back. That's my thought for this year.
Wow, that's a big one. I don't know. That's Kenyon Drake was such a disappointment last year, so I'm not putting any chips in him. And Josh Jacobs has been amazing. So
John Gruden. Gruden always comes up with these crazy schemes that no one really understands. And there's a reason why they brought in Kenyon Drake. And last year, the production of Josh Jacobs, as you head towards the end of the season, wasn't there as it was towards the beginning. I actually think that,
the one problem with the Raiders, they traded away half their offensive line. So this is a really bad offensive line. So I expect Baltimore to crush the Raiders. They're only 4-point favorites. To me, I would pick Baltimore all day on this one.
Okay. And last thing, I am intrigued by Henry Ruggs. He was one of your top wide receivers last year. He was picked over Justin Jefferson, all right? And so a lot of times let's see how well Henry Ruggs does, because people have been promising a Henry Ruggs showing. We have not seen it all last year.
Yeah, you're right. Think about it. He was the number 1 rookie receiver over Justin Jefferson,
number 1
Higgins, CD, right? Like all of these guys. I was like, John Gruden does not look like he's the genius that everyone thought he was.
Well, he was the fastest wide receiver at the combine. That's why they drafted him first. But boy, it just proved that the combine, you can't go too much on the combine. You got to go on production on the field.
Yeah.
All right, we're running out of time. We probably will not record next week since both Jimmy and I are gone, but we'll probably be back in time for week 2 to talk about the week 1 games and to preview week 2 as well too. So guys, thank you very much, and we'll talk soon.